I took the ferry from Victoria, BC to Port Angeles in Washington to bike the North Cascades Loop over the course of 8 days and 138 kilometers. The ride took me from lush green forests on the coast to the semi-arid desert in the Methow Valley. I traveled 40 kilometers by ferry and 109 by bike on the first day of my ride. When I landed in Port Angeles, I rode east along the ocean on the Olympic Discovery Trail. I crossed the 2.4 kilometer long Hood Canal floating bridge and set up camp at Kitsap Memorial State Park. On the second day of my trip, I biked 170 kilometers from the Kitsap Peninsula through Seattle and into the North Cascade Mountains. I took a short ferry ride from Kingston across Puget Sound to Edmonds. I followed the gravel Tolt pipeline trail out of Seattle and into the hills. I reached the entrance to the North Cascade Mountains late in the afternoon. At dusk, I stopped in the mountain town of Skykomish before heading up the road to my campground at Beckler River. On the third day of my trip, I watched the landscape change dramatically as I rode 144 kilometers from the Beckler River to the Columbia River. I took my time crossing Stevens Pass, which is about 900 meters of elevation gain over 25 kilometers. The section of the Wenatchee River that leads into Leavenworth is one of the highlights of this route because there's a bunch of fast-flowing rapids, and it's where you really start to see the green forest transition into semi-arid desert. After getting some Mexican food in Wenatchee for dinner, I rode along the Rocky Reach Trail to my campground in Lincoln Rock State Park. On the fourth day of my trip, I rode 99 kilometers along the Columbia River in dry, scorching heat. It reached 42 degrees in the afternoon, so I hung out in Chelan for a few hours to cool off as I waited for dusk. I rode along quiet desert roads as the sun set on my way to Alta Lake State Park. On day 5, I rode 114 kilometers through the serene Methow Valley leading back into the North Cascade Mountains. Twist was my favorite town on the route. It has a great coffee shop, bakery, and a Sri Lankan food truck. The main street's gorgeous, and the environment's really unique. Winthrop is another incredible town. It has an old western theme on its main street, and a few footbridges that provide gorgeous views of its river. I took Wolf Creek Road through Ponderosa pine forests from Winthrop to Mazama. It was one of the coolest roads I've ever ridden on. I re-entered the North Cascades from the east and finished my day at Klipchuk Campground. On day 6, I rode 171 kilometers from Mazama over Washington Pass to Baker Lake. I spent the morning riding up Washington Pass. It's about 800 meters of elevation gain over the course of 20 kilometers. I arrived at the campground on Baker Lake after midnight. It was so dark that I just set up my tent on a tarp and went to sleep. On day 7, I rode 146 kilometers out of the North Cascade Mountains, across Whidbey Island to Port Townsend. I finished the final stretch of the North Cascades Highway and then rode sections of the North Cascades Trail toward the coast. I crossed the Squinish Channel to get to Fidalgo Island, and Deception Pass to get to Whidbey Island. I took the ferry from Fort Casey to Port Townsend. I returned home on the 8th day of my trip. I took the Olympic Discovery Trail to Port Angeles and then ferried back to Victoria.